Welcome everyone. My name is Lee Johnson. My wife and I, we have set up a business in the Northern Virginia area called Value Investment Partners. And what Value Investment Partners is today is it's an opportunity to work with like-minded individuals. When we started the group, we have a meetup that's local to Northern Virginia. It was Loudon REI Connect. My goal was to form a circle of trusted friends inside of the area who had not only an interest in investing in multifamily, but who wanted to do just something around real estate as a whole. Jason, you got that?
Yep.
All right. Invested in real estate as a whole. And my story is when my wife and I returned from working overseas, I had spent some time in South Africa, as well as I had spent some time in Singapore, London. We made it back to the United States. And, you know, if you guys are not from the United States, it's kind of difficult to get a job. You got to go through a lot of stuff with immigration, et cetera. So we decided that we wanted to make some investments. We started doing flips, right? Flips, for anyone who doesn't already know, flips are very good if you don't have any W-2 type of income. However, when you do have W-2 income, flips can actually make your income tax situation just a little bit bad. And I still have a job that I love. I'm a technologist, as you can see on the screen right now. As a technologist, I'm also a regional vice president for sales engineering for a Dell Technologies business named VirtuStream, right? So I've been invested in real estate since 2003. And part of that was when I bought my first house in Northern Virginia. I bought a house in Northern Virginia in 99, 2000 timeframe. And by 2004, that house had almost doubled in value. So I took the equity out of that house and I started investing in different places. You know, like many people, I crashed and burned around the 2008, 2009 timeframe. But I went abroad. While I was abroad, I saved up a lot of money. And through saving up that money, I got back into the game. So a little life lesson there is that, hey, if you fall down, eventually you got to get back up, dust yourself off, and continue to move forward. As Jason mentioned, I reside in Northern Virginia with my lovely wife and children. In my spare time, I'm always reading a book. I love vintage automobiles and just doing some volunteering inside of the community. What we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to give you an overview of how you invest in multifamily syndications, funds, etc. So when you're talking about investing in syndications, there's two things that you ultimately have to know, right? On the passive side, you will be something called an LP or limited partner. Now, as an LP, you have a number of different options that are available into funds that you can actually use to invest on the LP side of the house, right? You can use your self-directed IRA. We're going to spend a little bit of time on that. But the other side of the house, when you're invested in a syndication, is the fact that there are general partners. Now, there can be one to many general partners, but the general partners are called sponsors, they're called syndicators, but also they're called general partners. And the general partners are the ones who actually put together the deal, and they charge a certain amount of fees in order to be able to sponsor that deal. There's some equity, some capital that is at risk as they're putting the deal together. It takes a lot of money to basically put together a deal. So we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But the focus that we're really going to go into here is how I have personally used my self-directed IRA in order to do some investing, right, so that I could have control over it. So let's start out with, what is a self-directed IRA, right? A self-directed IRA is an opportunity for the average investor to make an investment in real estate, right? We're no longer, gone are the days when a person had one career or worked with one employer throughout their career. Those days were in the 50s and the 60s where an individual would work with one company their entire career. Now, individuals are, I think the average is individuals will work across maybe 7 or 8 jobs in their career. When you have a self-directed IRA, this is similar to what you have at work today with your 401k. The difference is that a self-directed IRA allows for you to control the investments that your individual retirement account is investing in. So I have a couple of examples here. One is real estate. You can purchase assets directly inside of your IRA. If you're going to purchase a home, you typically cannot have any type of debt on that property. You especially can't go and put a mortgage on that property that your self-directed IRA is owning. Other options for you will be commodities. You can go and purchase precious metals such as gold and silver. If you wanted to, you can actually use your self-directed IRA to make hard money loans. One caveat that I would leave with you there is that if you're going to be making hard money loans out of your self-directed IRA, you typically want to be in first trust position. When you're in second or any senior trust position, you kind of sort of can get yourself into trouble when it comes to hard money lending. I would say only invest as a hard money lender when you can get first position trust. Also, different states have different rules. I believe Maryland and Baltimore, you can invest in tax liens, right? Basically, a tax lien is when the persons haven't paid their taxes and the government puts a lien on that house. You can purchase that house. Well, you can purchase that lien if the people don't pay, right? You then can foreclose on that property and you can own the property free and clear. There are different rules by state. Virginia is a different animal than Maryland as well as North Carolina. My brother who's doing some investing is actually investing in tax liens in North Carolina. When it comes to a self-directed IRA, there are different flavors of it. Personally, I have my investment is in a checkbook IRA. And what a checkbook IRA gives you is the ability to write a check immediately. There are a number of different custodians who you can work with. Some of them have different rules as to how you can make the investment. When I first started doing this in 2003, 2004, I had used Equity Trust. Equity Trust didn't work out for me, nothing against them, but it was a little bit slow. So when I wanted to make an investment, I had to fill out some forms, wait for the money to be sent to me, or I would have to pay fees. I think at that point in time, it was $25 or $50 to have the money expedited to me. When you're using your self-directed IRA, there's a couple things that I want to point out to you. You have to use the proper rules to set up the process, right? Because if you're going to use debt, there could be some tax consequences because you have an advantage when you're using pre-tax money, right? You have to be concerned about that. And you also want to avoid prohibited transactions, right? Art, different types of antiques, stamps. And also you want to be careful as to whom it is that you're investing with. You cannot invest with any family members above you. So your parents, you can't invest with anyone below you. So if you have children of age, you can't invest with them or loan them money out of your self-directed IRA. So here are some of the providers that I had mentioned to you. There's the Entrust Group. We mentioned briefly Equity Trust. Equity Trust, they're proven. They've been in this industry for a very long time. The ones that I have personally explored are UDirect Services. And today, my self-directed IRA is with Broad Financial, and Broad Financial works with Madison Trust as the custodian for your investments. right here is just 5 different companies who you can actually work with. The difference is there are probably 500 to 1,000 different self-directed IRA providers that you can work with. And in addition to that, you could also use things like your QRP, solo 401k. There are different investment vehicles that you can use. I don't want to, spoil the pond, etc. But there are many different options that you have available to you to use in order to invest using your self-directed IRA.
Hey, Lee, I wanted to back you up a little bit.
Mhm.
Just when it comes to, for those who don't know, a self-directed IRA isn't something that's talked about, right? Most employers don't really tell you about this. How can somebody have a self-directed IRA? How do they get started with one? What's the criteria for it?
Well, there is the only criteria that you have is that you're going to be using a stranded 401k. As I mentioned earlier, most people are going to have several different jobs within their career. So you start out of college if you're invested in your 401k. Once you leave that employer, right, you are then able to move those 401k funds either to another 401k with your new employer. You have the option of do nothing, you can leave it there, or you can take those monies and move them over into a self-directed IRA. Does that help to answer the question?
It does. Appreciate you.
Thank you. All
Hey,
right.
quick question. Sorry, quick related question. That's I'm guessing that's probably the most convenient way to do it. But is there any issue with also converting existing IRAs you have, other than you'd have to de-invest in any investments you might have within those before you convert them, I assume?
Hopefully, I'm going to let me play back your question. Is your question, can you make an investment can you convert your 401k with your current employer to a self-directed IRA? Is that the question?
Oh no, it's actually can you convert if you have an existing like a regular Roth or a traditional IRA? Can you convert that into a self-directed?
The difference between it is when you're using a Roth, the Roth is post-tax money, right? When you're using 401k, it's pre-tax money. So the monies that are inside of your 401k haven't been taxed at this point in time, right? So those are 2 different types of entities and structures. You wouldn't want to put like a Roth IRA into a self-directed IRA. I would say that if you're in a Roth, there are options that I haven't personally explored, but I know others have told me that they have either used the Roth to create like a qualified retirement plan and things of that sort. But I don't have personal experience in using post-tax money. Personally, for me, whenever I'm using post-tax money, I prefer other alternative investments. For instance, you might have heard of the infinite banking concept, right? So for me, on the post-tax side of it, I have basically created or gotten life insurance policies, whole life insurance policies. Why? Because I only have to pay for 10 years for those life insurance policies, and they continue to grow in value until the policy holder expires. So that money is never taxed ever. And depending on the style that you use, that's what I would do if I'm using post-tax money. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you. But I guess one last question: if you had a traditional IRA versus a 401k, say you'd already transferred your 401k over to a traditional IRA, there wouldn't be any issue with transferring that over to a self-directed because you obviously wouldn't be taxed like you would with your Roth.
100%. And I hope that, and I'll try to communicate it again, because you're going to be working at several jobs throughout your career, transferring those monies once you've left that employer, you can move that into another 401k. And early on in my career, when I left a company that was at Fidelity and my new employer was with T. Rowe Price, right? So that I wouldn't forget about that money. I decided, hey, I would move those monies from Fidelity to T. Rowe Price and start making their investments there, right? I think right now I'm probably on my 7th employer since college. And I've just taken all of those monies that have accumulated over the years. And now I'm in control of all of those assets and what they're invested in. Today, I'm like yesterday was my 6-year anniversary with the company who I'm with, right? And I wish I could move that money because there's enough of it there, but I'm not able to touch that money until, I leave or I reach like 59 and a half. So I'm a little bit ways off from 59 and a half as well. But great question.
Thanks for the details.
Pleasure. All right. So here we are talking about how you're going to take, and maybe that was the point right there. I needed to change this from the last time I did this presentation, and moving a Roth into a self-directed IRA. I wouldn't say you would do that, but traditional IRA and 401k, yes, that would go into a new self-directed IRA. Now, when the self-directed IRA is created, it's typically going to be a single person LLC. Now, my experiences with Broad Financial and Madison Trust, they created the LLC. Of course, I live in Virginia, so it's a Virginia LLC. They created the operating agreement. They filed and got the EIN number. They sent me a binder that has all of the things that I can and cannot do with that self-directed IRA, right? So I've used this IRA money in every single way that you see here on the right-hand side. I've invested it in real estate, right? I also have made private loans. That's why I have the experience to tell you, if you're going to do a private loan with your self-directed IRA, you have to hold first trust position, because if you don't, and that property gets foreclosed for whatever reason, as the senior debt holder, you can be wiped out. But one of the other investments that I have found to be very attractive is crowdfunding platforms. And I'll show you a crowdfunding example that I have used. Also, I have used those monies to invest in different syndications. At this point in time, between my wife and I, we're invested in about 17 different syndications at this point in time. And the great thing about the syndication is that every month or every quarter, it's making a cash flow distribution to you. The cash flow distributions plus the equity multiple gives you typically over 100% return on your money. And typically this is going to occur over 3 to 5 years. That's the typical hold for a syndication. So here it is. One of the options that you have is investing via crowdfunding sites. So some of the crowdfunding sites that I have personal experience with is Realty Shares. If you ever invested in Realty Shares, you now know that Realty Shares doesn't exist. I do have 3 investments still with Realty Shares. The investments aren't performing as they should, but it was an opportunity for me to put a little bit of money to work using a crowdfunding platform when I was just learning this in 2017, 2018, right? But with the crowdfunding site, so Realty Shares is there. The one that I'm going to mention to you all tonight is PeerStreet, but there's also CrowdStreet. There's other ones like Fundrise. I think there's another one called Yield something or the other. But when you're investing in a crowdfunding site, what is happening is a whole bunch of people are using an internet type of platform, and they're consolidating their resources together so that they can make an investment, right? And there's different means to do this. The one thing that you have to understand is when you are investing in anything that's being publicly advertised, you typically have to be an accredited investor, right? So an accredited investor as an individual is annual income of $200,000 a year for the last 2 years, or having a net worth of $1 million, not including your primary residence. So one of the things that you're going to have to understand as you're making investments into syndications or into using crowdfunding, right, you're going to have to know, well, what are the limitations around doing so? Most syndication, most syndications will either fall under rules 506B, which means that there isn't any advertising going on, or there's 506C. I'm sure if you've been to enough of Jason's meetups, you guys have an understanding of what the difference is between the the SEC rules around private investments. So here is what's going to happen with crowdfunding. You have an investor, developer who manages a real estate project. They're going to seek funding. There's many different ways that you can seek funding. As I just mentioned, there were two of them, 506B and 506C, right? They put that onto a platform. One of the platforms that I mentioned to you was CrowdStreet, PeerStreet, Realty Shares were there, Fundrise were there. And investors who are looking to invest in those properties or in those types of investments, they submit themselves there, right? We're going to give you a quick example of what I have personally done. And if you have questions about that at the very end, you could always send me a text message or drop me an email and I can go into it further. Different types of crowdfunding have debt-only platforms, right? So PeerStreet is a debt-only platform. What happens is that you give somebody a loan, they're going to pay you interest. When the loan matures or you're end of the period, they're going to pay you back your principal. You walk away with the interest that you have accumulated, right? And the deal is done. That's a debt-only type of investment. I'm going to jump over and talk about common equity, right? What common equity means that you have an investment into the asset. Some of the times you see with the syndications, they're going to give you a 70-30 split, right? Now, what's going to happen is 70% will go to the LPs, as I mentioned on the first or second slide. 30% will go to the GP. The difference between not having a preferred equity and common equity is with preferred equity, the LP investors get paid first, right? Common equity, everybody gets paid at the same time. For any of the deals that I have personally invested in, right, I have only invested in deals that are leaning towards the LP investors because that's where I was at the time. As an LP investor, it's more beneficial to the investors that they get paid before the partners get paid. The reason why that is that because that makes the GP or the syndicator or the sponsor, they're going to work harder because they have more of their investment at risk. But there's also certain terms that you should understand if you're ever going to invest in a syndication as well. Here is an example of what I have personally done with the platform called PeerStreet, right? So with PeerStreet, it's a platform, it's there 24 hours a day, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can always go onto the platform and see investments that are available for you to invest in, right? So as you see on the dashboard side of it, you have an overview which tells you what loans that you have awaiting closing, the outstanding principal, and the cash that is available. I can personally tell you that every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, they will release a batch of loans that have been made available to the platform. This slide presentation that we're doing tonight is about a year old, right? And at this point in time, I had been investing on the platform for about 2.5 years, right? The great thing about investing on a platform such as PeerStreet is the fact that you're always going to be in first trust position. And how do you get in first trust position? I believe the term is pari passu, which allows for you to, PeerStreet will allow all of the loans that come together to be consolidated as one. and then they ride in first trust position. I can tell you with COVID, a lot of loans that have been on the platform have, run into errors because these are mainly flippers who are taking out investments on the platform. What I can personally tell you is that in the 3 years, 4 years that I've been investing on this platform, PeerStreet has never lost a loan. I have been made 100% whole, regardless of the asset that I have been invested in. And I have basically invested in assets all around the country. I think right now, today, I just checked and I probably have about, 46 different loans on the platform. And I'll tell you how I got there. I set certain criteria around the investments that I move into. There was a point in time where if you didn't use automated investments, as you can see where the green sign is on the top part, you would be kicked out of an investment, or you wouldn't have a chance to make an investment on the platform. So they have something called automated investment, and I'll show you how you do that over here.
Hey, Lee.
Go ahead.
Hey, can you move those black boxes?
No.
We want to see, right?
You have people hunting me down, so I can't. Those were done for a reason.
No, I'm just messing with you. But yeah, I did want to know, do you have, does this platform offer like expectations as far as like what the returns look like?
Well, every single investment is going to be different, but what we'll do is we'll go into it. I wish I had my pointer so that I can point to different pieces of the slide here. But over here on your left-hand side, you see bridge loans, right? And when it comes to the bridge loans, right, you get to make different types of investments. And what I have shown you here is the different types of investments that I'm set for. For instance, with the bridge loans, you can make a 12-month, 24-month, or 36-month investment, right? Then you have the maximum LTV on the second line that you want to invest in. So you have 60%, 65%, 70%, and 75, right? And since I'm over here and I'm looking for yield, right? You have the minimum yield that you're willing to invest in. So you have 8+, 7+, or 6+, right? So if you just want money to always be working, you would probably set it as least restrictive as possible. I have personally set mine to be restrictive, especially in the age of COVID, right? I didn't want to have money working in one investment that could actually hurt the portfolio. So what I did is I reduced my maximum investment per loan to $2,500, right? What this is showing you here is that the $2,500 is an investment in one loan, right? But you can set a maximum for the portfolio for how much you're invested in bridge loans, right? So the bridge loans are going to have that term. You're stuck in that term when you make that investment inside of the loan. I don't know of a way to get outside of a loan, so I set my maximum term to be 12 months, right? I'm really looking for making a hard money loan for a rehabber. Personally, having done rehabs myself, you should be in and out of a rehab on a single family property in no more than 6 to 12 months. So that's the investor that I was targeting. But over here, as you see, you have cash offer loans, right? And the term on those loans are 3 to 5 months, and they give you a yield, right? 5% off the bat. And then if you just need to have money working for a couple of months, right, you can do the 30-day notes, which have a 1-month term, right, and offer a 3% yield, right? What I like about PeerStreet so much is the fact that PeerStreet allows you to invest small balance loans when you are paid like interest. for instance, as you can see in the box, but it's grayed out, is the fact that the minimum loan on the platform is typically $1,000, right? However, if you're paid interest of say $150, if you select this reinvest small balance, right? Once it reaches $100, they'll automatically, using the investment criteria that you set, they'll automatically move you into a loan. So what I do with this, and I probably should have put it the other way, is whenever I receive cash flows from my multifamily syndications, I immediately move that money over to PeerStreet and I put it to work. Once it gets back up to $25,000 or $50,000, I move it and I make another investment in the multifamily syndication. And as I mentioned, we're up to about 17 syndications that we're invested in. So this is the system that makes money for me. It's a slow type of investment. Yeah, I'm not going to get rich overnight, but I'm close to having what my exit from my job is going to be. I don't know if I'm probably going to exit because I really enjoy what I do. But at that point in time, I have the luxury of being able to walk away if I wanted to walk away. So that's what investing from my perspective is all about, is having options as to what I can do with my time, right? I can have all the money in the world, but without time, it's nothing.
I have a quick question on that website that you guys that you just had up. That's a non-accredited investor site that you have, or do you have to be an accredited investor to invest there?
I'm going to say when I first invested on PeerStreet, which was about 4 years ago, it's a site that's for accredited investors, but they didn't verify. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I guess it does. The other part of that I guess would be another question kind of along the same lines is the fact that you have the IRA set up with, I guess you could have done it through trust equity back in the past, that they would have been fine with using that, or because you're talking about, because I know you have to be specific with how you spend your money in the IRA to not be basically using it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
So they're one of the entities that are perfectly acceptable to use.
Yeah, no, there's no, I tell people this all the time, is if you trust yourself, go with the checkbook IRA. If you don't trust yourself as much as you should, I would say go with a company like Equity Trust. Equity Trust, they're going to ask you about that investment. You have to fill out the documentation before they send you the money. With a checkbook IRA, literally, let's just say you came to me and said, Lee, I want to make a renovation on a single property flip that I'm working on, right? Literally, if I do my due diligence, I can write you a check on the spot for whatever amount of money you need to do the rehab loan. I can do that immediately because I have checks over here that I can write to you. It's no different than any checking account that you have at any other time. That's the difference.
Haley, another question that came in the chat was how liquid is that? How liquid is PeerStreet?
Liquid is PeerStreet is backed by some private equity ventures that are out there, similar to what you had with Robinhood and the others. They're backed by private equity ventures. I believe that they're probably on their Series D or Series E round of funding. It's valued at a pretty good clip. It's not every day that I check this, but when I was doing my due diligence into PeerStreet, I did check them out to see who they were backed by. One of the things that PeerStreet will tell you is they have never lost a loan. In addition to that, they're using like artificial intelligence and machine learning to pick certain loans that they would put onto the platform. So long story short is there are originators who are creating the hard money loans, right? They originate that loan, they fund that loan, they could immediately bring that over to PeerStreet to put it onto a platform. So let's just say that the hard money lender got the loan or issued the loan at 10%, right? That loan is going to appear on PeerStreet at 8%. Why? Because PeerStreet takes 1%. So you got the loan at 10 by the originator. PeerStreet takes a point, that's 9. It's going to be on the platform for 8. That's how the process works.
I see, but I think if you invested, let's say 25,000 or something in this, could you pull your money back out, or do you have to wait through those time periods that you selected, like 12 months or 24 months?
You're going to have to wait. That's the reason why I had selected only 12, right? I really want that money to come back and I can do something else with it. And really, I'm looking to work with rehabbers, flippers, etc. When you start going up into 26 months and 36 months, you start seeing people do other things besides, short-term loans, right? There was one time I was on a platform, I had an investment in a redevelopment of a shopping center, right? And that investment went south. It was about maybe 12 to 15 months before PeerStreet actually sued the company, got the asset back, and eventually sold it. That's why I could say with a level of confidence that PeerStreet will do all of the litigation, etc., in case there was something that goes south on the loan.
Let's see. Okay.
But it's a great platform. I still have a lot of money that I'm putting to work over there. I would say, you don't know me, you don't trust me, do your own due diligence. And if the platform works for you, it works for you. I can tell you personally that it has worked out for me. Any more questions, Jason?
I think maybe you mentioned this, but so it does follow a term, right? And I'm assuming, Angel, with that question, you're talking about your investment, right? Your investment is in there for a term, for a 12-month or
I'm talking like the time limit for the investment. Like, is it a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year? What term is associated with it?
The PeerStreet you select the term, it can be 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So what I mentioned to you all is that PeerStreet and how I'm using it is almost like a TIPS, Treasury Investment Protection Security, right? I'm taking money from my multifamily investments and immediately I'm moving that money onto PeerStreet. PeerStreet every day is releasing new loans. I'm taking those new loans and I'm investing it there. Once it grows again, I then move the money back out and I make another multifamily investment. And for me, I'm only investing right now in value add multifamily investment. I'm not doing anything core. I'm not doing core plus. I'm not doing anything opportunistic. For me, I stick to what I know. What I know as of this moment is value add multifamily. They're usually cash flowing on day one. With some of the different sponsors that I've worked with, you will get a check the next month, right? So you close this month, which is March. On April, you will get a check. So I like to work with those types of sponsors. And there's a dime a dozen of different sponsors out there. I always say, do your due diligence on the sponsor, understand their track record, understand their history. But if they're going to do an SEC publication, there's also going to be something called the private placement memorandum. And as they're putting together that security, there's a clause there that is called a bad boy clause. In case if anybody had been restricted, you can ask the sponsor for the credentials to make sure that no one who is on the GP side of the house has violated any type of investments in the past. So all of that is there. Typically, your private placement memorandum is going to be a document that's created by an SEC attorney. That document, I haven't seen them under 100 pages. right? But typically the average for me has been between 100 and 200 pages. The first thing that you want to look for when you're going through a PPM is what is the sources and uses section so that you can understand how the monies are going to be used. Now, because I'm using my self-directed to invest in syndications, right? We had to learn how to do our due diligence against those assets, right? So if any of you guys are members of the Michael Blank family, you will know and remember he has something called the syndicated deal analyzer. This is a screenshot of the syndicated deal analyzer, which basically has been made to give you ideas as to whether or not if you should invest. Now, all of these items that you see here are the items that I use when I do due diligence on an asset that I'm going to invest in and that I will bring to my partners. So here you have a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25. Even at 1.55, which you see according to the Michael Blank syndicated deal analyzer, 1.55 is good. But personally, I don't invest in any syndication unless it's at 1.75. That's the bar for me. Now, the bar for you could be different. I would say I'm a conservative investor, and 1.75 is where I land. You're also going to want to look at the AAR, right? And I don't invest in the deal unless it's at 17% like you see here. And IRR, I typically stop at about 16, right? But all of these are going to be different items that you can use as you are doing your due diligence against the syndicator or the sponsor to know whether or not if you're going to make an investment there. The one thing that I have to caution everyone with is the fact that if you're going to be investing in multifamily syndications on the LP side, it is a passive investment. The reason why I stress that is because some people want to treat it as though it's an active investment, and it's not. It's a passive investment. You're giving money, you're going to expect a return. You want to make sure that the sponsor is doing whatever it is that they wrote and said that they were going to do inside the investment summary and also inside of the PPM. Okay, we talked about debt service coverage ratio. That basically just says how much money is left over after debt is covered, right? You have the internal rate of return. As I said here, you see 15 is a good number, right? But I have a bottom floor of 16% IRR. Hopefully you guys understand what this is, but again, Jason's a multifamily investor. He's done a number of deals. You can reach out to him or you can reach out to me with any type of questions that you have here, but the P. Barnum rules apply. A fool and their money is always soon separated. Don't be a fool. Don't let anyone take your money. You work too hard for your money. Do your due diligence so that you can understand the investment. Over here is with the continuation of the syndicated or SDA, syndicated deal analyzer, are the different opportunities that you have here. You have what you get from the marketing package. Of course, the broker is there and responsible for selling that asset for the current owner. You take everything that you see inside of the marketing package at face value and face value alone. You have to create your version. You have to then do your projects, and then you have the level where you can make an offer. And as you can see, this is a glorified Excel spreadsheet. And at the bottom, right, there's something called the 10-minute offer, right? With the 10-minute offer, you basically have a purchase price, you have a cap rate, and it tells you whether or not if you should spend any time underwriting this deal any further. Because if they want 5 million and you've done a quick analysis of the project and you see that the most that you would be able to offer is 3 million, you might as well walk away, because guess what? There's going to be another deal and you don't want to waste your time on that. But if they want 5 and you're at 4.5, 4.75, you can actually make that deal work. And then you want to go into the underwriting where you do all of the rent projections, you want to do your expenses projections, and all of those types of things, vacancies, concessions, and all the lots, right? This is why when you start making the upgrade, I'm not going to say upgrade, the advancement into multifamily syndication, you're basically doing a flip, but on steroids. Rather than doing a flip for one property at a time, you're doing it for 50 or 100 or 200. That's the only difference. All right. So tonight we talked about, the different vehicles that you have to invest using your self-directed IRA. I'll tell you guys, it's been a wonderful vehicle that I have used exponentially, right? Exponentially. Before I came to this present job that I had, I took all of my 401ks, consolidated all of them, and I went all in on multifamily investments. And I can tell you, now we are in 2021, COVID was terrible in 2020. I can tell you personally that none of my investments that I have invested in using my self-directed IRA outside of the realty shares, none of my investments have gone sour. Every single month I have received my cash flow distributions, right? Every single property has continued to pay. I don't know how some of them were able to do it, but I can tell you every month, by the end of the month, I'm receiving all my ACHs and they have all performed well. And I can tell you about 4 of the properties that we're invested in are in Texas. And even with what happened with Texas last month, the property that we invested in Galveston City, Texas, only had 1 unit that had a pipe burst. The property maintained power, right? And the distributions are still coming along. So let's summarize this, right? Decide on the provider for your fund. We talked about equity trust. We talked about UDirect, but personally, I have invested using Broad Financial and Madison Trust. Set up your IRA and register the company to transact under. If you use a company like Broad Financial, I think you pay them something like $1,300. They send you everything in a binder, right? Finally, do your research before investing. Just like, if you're buying a car, you're buying a house, you have to do your own due diligence, especially when you're playing in this space, right? Because it's working with sophisticated investors. As we had mentioned, there's the accredited investor, but some syndications are allowed to work with sophisticated investors. And sophisticated investors don't meet all the requirements for an accredited investor, but some sponsors will allow those people to participate. So with that being said, thank you for your time. Thank you, Jason, for having us tonight. Happy investing.